Okay, are we ready to go, Gia?
It's just loading, 1 minute.
Okay. Hi, Frank.
Okay, we are live on YouTube.
And Frank, you're muted.
How's
There
that?
you go. Good.
All right. Hello, everybody, and good evening. My name is Stephen Hannes. I'm the manager of facilities for the town of Canmore. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that the town of Canmore is located on the traditional territories of the Treaty 7 Nations in southern Alberta and the Métis Region number 3. Thank you. And so as we embark on this meeting here, we'll go over the agenda here. I'm trying to just expand the screen here. Gia, if you can make that a little bit bigger. There you go. Excellent. So but without further ado, it's Wednesday, November 10th, 2021. And I'd like to call to order and approval of the agenda. Before we get into the agenda, are there any additions or deletions to this agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll go into introductions. I'd like to acknowledge our new members and existing members of the Heliport Monitoring Committee. We'll start off with Nick Servos. Why don't you go ahead and give a quick introduction of yourself and why you joined the committee here, and maybe any background that you're comfortable in presenting to everybody.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. I spent 3 years on the Heliport Monitoring Committee for the last term, and it was an interesting endeavor. My background in aviation is not really with helicopters, but I'm retired 747 pilot with Air Canada, and have been around flying since I was born. And I like aviation, and I keep in touch with a lot of the people around the world that are in aviation, and I'm here to hopefully give some information and some assistance to the rest of the people on the committee. I live up in Silvertip, and I've been a resident of Canmore since 2012. We moved in a few months before the flood, so we had experience with that type of an operation as well. So thank you, Stephen.
All right, thank you, Nick, and welcome back to the committee. And Nick was the chair of the last term, and he did a great job. So thank you and welcome back. Going down the list here, Todd Cooper with Alpine.
Yep. Hello, Todd Cooper, the base manager for Alpine Helicopters here in Canmore. Grew up in Canmore. Canmore is my home, and I'm glad that we can be part of the community.
All right, Todd. Yeah, also welcome back, and thank you for all your efforts over the years, working with the town directly with me over the last number of years, and also with the Heliport over many number of years. So thank you very much. Frank Lischak, go ahead.
Hi there. I think most of you know me and know my history. My interest in being part of the Helicopter Monitoring Committee has really been one of being on the inside of the committee and being part of the discussions in order to reduce environmental impacts, including noise and greenhouse gases. And the town saw fit to accept my application for that. Having said that, I fully understand the prime reason for the heliport, in my view, is public safety. And today's tour of the heliport capitalized on that aspect of it. So it was a real good aspect to start off on. So I'm hoping that we can have a full discussion of all the issues and have a productive discussion. And I'm just happy to be on the inside instead of on the outside looking in.
All right, Frank, thank you for all that and working with us during the course of the release renewal and all the feedback you and people that you represent provided. So thank you. Next up is Richard Berry. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Richard Berry, and I'm a bit like Nick in that I have a history in aviation. I used to be in the Air Force as an avionics tech and simulator tech, and then I moved into, I got my commercial license in the UK and became a flight instructor. And then I kind of threw that all away when I came to Canmore. I've been here since 2000, but now I've got back into aviation again. I now fly just small aircraft out of Springbank. My interest in the Heliport committee is both from an aviation point of view and also that I'm in the Cougar Creek neighbourhood, so we do have some noise issues here as well. So hopefully I can see both sides of the equation. So I'm very grateful that I've been accepted onto the committee and look forward to working with everybody.
All right, thank you, Richard. And next up is Councillor Jeff Hilstead.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm the council rep for the Heliport Committee. I've been the rep since I was first elected back in 2017. I also live in an area affected by the heliport noise, as I live in Grotto. So I get to watch the helicopters fly past my house over the highway every day. So I've enjoyed being on this committee for the last 4 years and look forward to continue to contribute to this committee and just to be here. So thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Excited to have this group together. I really want to extend a thank you to our previous committee members during their term, and welcome the new committee members to the next round of work that we have ahead of us. Going into the next topic here, background and transition type information here. So we'll quickly go through this. I expect that most of you have had a chance to review and are familiar with the information, but I'll go over some highlights for yourselves and others that might be watching here live here. So of course, the single source of truth that we have for the committee is located on the Town of Canmore website, where we have the main information, the leases, the updates, and those kinds of things. So that's what a primary method that we like to communicate out to the public, as well as where these videos and those kinds of things will be posted. So that's where the main hub of information for the Heliport Monitoring Committee will be, and the link is provided here. Now with the history, we went over that a little bit with the tour here today, but for those that weren't able to make it, I want to acknowledge that this heliport has been in place since 1987, and there's been a number of different operators on that facility. But essentially, it is a Town of Canmore Town of Canmore facility that we have Alpine Helicopters as the operator on that facility. So we've delegated that authority to them via the lease. And so since 1987, so that was essentially built for the Olympics in preparation for the 1988 Olympics by the province of Alberta, and eventually got into the town's control, and the town owned land eventually, and it's gone through a number of different leases and agreements over those years. But essentially right now we're just ending a 10-year lease with Alpine Helicopters, and we're about to initiate another 10-year lease with them. And Todd, if you would like to add any other background from your perspective that you think is important with the history of the site and your role and that sort of thing, it'd be great.
Yeah, I wouldn't have a whole bunch to add to your comments there. That was pretty much covers the history of it.
Okay.
Thanks.
Excellent. Okay, Gia, if you want to pull up the existing lease that's in place right now. Can you just make that a little larger, please? Thank you. All right, so this lease is ending at the end of November. It is a standard lease going over the different risks and liabilities associated with this facility. It's one of our most complex leases that we have in our portfolio. Our department alone oversees over 50 leases and agreements, and this is definitely the top 1 or 2 most complicated leases that we have in place. A lot of it has to do with the complexity of the operations, the safety implications, the political ramifications, the community interest in this and impacts, and also the benefits of the different operations that are associated with it. So it's a very important lease to the organization and the community, and it does its job in terms of spelling out the terms and conditions. G, if you want to scroll down to Schedule A. Okay. So in this schedule here, essentially just outlines the premises, and for the viewers that might be watching, the red areas here indicate the actual lease. So the land that the town owns actually even goes beyond the hatched fence line of this facility, but the actual lease only represents the red portions here, and that's where the main operations of Alpine are, with the buildings, that leasehold improvements that were made on the site, with different the hangar on the top left there, the admin building on the bottom right, fuel storage tanks, storage shipping containers, and those sorts of things. And the town operates or is responsible for the remainder part of the site, including the parking lot and the actual helipad itself. Okay, if you just want to scroll down to the next one. Okay, yeah, I think let's go just straight to Schedule D. Number of improvements there. So this is really what the main focus of discussion in the community related to the operations on site. The regulations that basically Alpine and the town are basically operating within. It's a very regimented and highly regulated endeavor to have a heliport, as you can imagine, and it's these are the guiding documents here. Section on the itinerant helicopter operations we can gloss over, but mainly Section 3 there, the operations. So there's three main types of operations: the sightseeing, commercial, and emergency services. Of the categories that are really the types of work that Alpine and the heliport is undertaking. And these are the terms and conditions within which Alpine is required to operate within. Okay, moving down lower into the flight paths and approaches. This outlines basically just how Alpine will be coming in and out of the site, and basically how it will operate in and around the heliport, and when it's in the vicinity. The Fly Neighborly program, some basically common best practices. And a comment here on the equipment, with the focus on looking and researching and studying different ways that quieter operations can be implemented. Moving down there into the flight paths, this really is a general guideline as to the in and out routes of helicopters in and out of the heliport, with the focus on avoiding residential areas wherever possible, and basically getting as high as possible, as quickly as possible, out of town to minimize disturbance to the residents, but also the wildlife in those wildlife corridors. So Schedule D is really the crux of it in terms of the main impacts to the community, and that's typically what gets commented on the most in the community when it happens. And so in terms of the role of the Heliport Monitoring Committee is really, when we talk about complaints, there's what typically happens is as a member of the public, if they have a concern, they would contact myself as a town representative, and I would vet those complaints and assess whether or not that complaint is an infraction or possible infraction to the lease. If there's helicopter noise or a flight path that is basically within the hours of operation, that it doesn't necessarily the individual may be upset about that for whatever reason, but it might not be an official complaint against the lease. It's still a valid operation of that helicopter in that moment. So if it was something unusual though, the process would be that I would determine if it was in or out of the lease, contact Alpine to determine what was happening. Their flights are tracked and those kinds of things, so we can get an idea of who, where, and when was flying, and really understand what was happening. And if it was even their helicopters that were flying at the time, which often is not the case. And if there was an infraction, then it could trigger a meeting with this committee here, especially if it was a repeated infraction or a sort of an ongoing complaint with many residences or those sorts of things. You know, it would be warrant a possible meeting with this group to discuss and see if there's a mitigation option and a recommendation that we could forward to council for approval. Okay, so that's kind of the process of the lease. And is there any questions about this lease in particular? Okay, so because it's up for renewal here, we just a fast track here. We basically underwent a engagement process. We involved the committee to help develop a number of questions, or basically how to engage with the community, which led to the decision to survey key stakeholders. We developed a number of questions, and then administration took that information and consolidated that into a document, which was eventually presented to council. We held a town hall where individuals could now present their information and their feedback on the lease and the heliport in general. And from there, we made adjustments and eventually finalized the lease with Alpine this summer. And so, Gia, if you want to tee up the new lease. So as you can see, it's effective December 1st, and at that time we'll be putting this on our website again. So currently, I think the old lease is on there because this is not in effect quite yet. And it's a 10-year lease. So we basically reviewed everything in this lease, top to bottom. So there's a lot of legal ease that were updated, you know, definitions, the environmental kind of components, the renewal clauses, lots of just those kind of topics that we'll gloss over here. We don't need to go over into any detail. Let's go to Schedule A there. So yeah, we basically updated the premises here to reflect any changes that happened on the site over the last 10 years to modernize it. If you want to go to the next one there. We removed a depreciation schedule as well, no longer relevant. This is the inventory of the different upgrades that were made on site. So again, the town of Canmore has not built the buildings on site. Alpine purchased those buildings from the previous operator for the most part. And it also built or added fuel tanks or those kinds of things over the years as well. Okay, you want to schedule, I'll go down to Schedule C. And so this is now the replacement of Schedule D because we did remove one of the schedules in the previous lease. This is now Schedule C. Full update of all the different terms and conditions. And also we added a number of new sections in response to our own concerns as an organization, as well as Alpine's, and as well as what the community had to say. So yeah, we basically added some more clarity with the regulations, updated those, and we carved off regulations from guidelines. So this really these are the key the regulations that Alpine must work within. And so that got cleaned up in this section. Itinerant helicopter operations was somewhat unchanged. And then going to number 3 there, this is where we spent the most amount of time probably during the engagement process and also in negotiations with Alpine to get to where we're at here. So the main thing with sightseeing flights, we added a more clear definition of what that is. And we, instead of having 60 flights a day maximum, it's been dropped down to 35. We've talked about the type of flights here. So at the end of the day, in the previous lease, it identified 12 minute, I think 20 and 30-minute flights. There really weren't any concerns amongst the community that much with the longer flights. It's really the shorter flights that were of concern. So we got rid of the detail here and really just focused on what is the shortest flight that Alpine can operate. And we landed on 25 minutes or longer. We also added some criteria as to how many helicopters are able to basically operate with basically 4 at a given moment. So that basically wasn't, although that's the operation and that's been the practice somewhat to date, it wasn't spelled out in the lease, and there could have been there's ambiguity in basically the quantity of flights that could, the intensity of the flights per hour that could happen if this wasn't in place. So we added that in. Yeah, and the hours of operation remain at 8:30 to 5 p.m. Okay, and commercial flights, again, more just for clarity, we added some terminology in there to define commercial operations a little differently. Instead of using individual organization names, which names can change and businesses can change, we made it more generalized into the types of activities as opposed to the organizations. For emergency services, same idea here. Kept it somewhat the same and just added more clarity and definitions. We added a section on maintenance. That was a complaint that came up at some point in the previous lease or the previous years. Just to also, wherever possible, do test flights during regular operating hours to minimize disturbance to the neighboring areas. And just so folks know that the majority of maintenance that happens on the helicopters are conducted in the hangars, and helicopters from other bases don't come to Canmore very often to get their maintenance done. They're done at those heliports or in other heliports where Alpine is more set up with larger infrastructure. Okay. In terms of flight departure and approaches, we'll get to the map in a second here, but this was redefined here as well, updated to reflect current routes and improved routes, more in line of what's happening on the field. Okay, keep going, Gia. And here's the flight map. So one thing that was added was the flight route to Calgary here. The flight route to Banff back and forth, which was not identified previously, also showing the deflection of the route around the mine sites area because of to avoid any potential hazards from the explosive use of explosives and that sort of thing in that vicinity, and then also the route to and from the Lady Mac area. Okay, but in general, the idea still remains the same, where built-out areas are avoided wherever possible, and highways and other areas are used wherever possible as well. The Fly Neighborly program remains, and that's one of those guidelines that we're talking about, as well as the wildlife and recreation user guidelines from Kananaskis Country, Transport Canada. These are also just good best practices for Alpine to be aware of, which they are. And then in terms of noise reduction, you want to scroll down there. Yeah, so basically Alpine will continue to research, implement, and report on an ongoing basis. So they're adding the word report in this for discussion, so that it's clear as day as to what Alpine is working on and included into the annual report. A new section as well, the Climate Action Plan. basically outlines the importance of sustainability. That's becoming more and more front of mind of the community and as well as Alpine. And there will be more, there will be new reporting metrics that will be submitted to the town for review. Same with air quality. That also came up during the engagement processes, looking at ways to minimize that any issues of air quality that might be happening off-site. UAVs are not permitted on the heliport currently, but that was not spelled out in the previous lease, so we made it explicit in this version here. And then we also added more clarity about the annual report, just to make sure we have some clear headers that are going to be consistent from year to year over the next the term of this lease here. And it shows basically all the different sections of that will be added to the lease. One thing I didn't mention earlier in the sightseeing flights, one of the things that did come up was, you know, what is the economic benefits of the having a heliport in the community to the rest of the community. And so this data here will be collected here, some indices type data like where people came from, where people are staying, those kinds of things. And Tourism Canada asks us, Canmore have stats on basically every, in metrics on, what the spend is per night people are in Canmore, and where they're from also dictate what their spend will be in the community. So by Alpine providing this information will help us understand the economic spin-off benefits beyond just employing 30 to 50 staff that work and live in the community at Alpine and spending their earnings in the community as well, and those kinds of things. Okay, I think what else is there? I think that's about it for the new lease that I'd like to talk about. Is there any, as a really quick overview, I know you've all read it or read the different sections of it that are important to you. Do anybody have any questions about this lease? Any specifics? Okay. All right. Okay, we'll go to the next item there. If Gia, you want to pull up the bylaw here and expand that, please. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so this is a governing document that really gives us the framework as to how this committee will operate. So please familiarize yourself with it. This is a committee of council, and so council has representation on this committee through Councillor Hilstead, and it basically, that's an acknowledgement of the importance of this committee to Mayor and Council, and it's not just a recent type thing. This has been a requirement for a number of years now, and it's always been an important committee of council. Just keep moving down here. So I will be the in terms of roles and responsibilities, I will be the town representative. It says general manager of municipal infrastructure, I believe, in here. But what that implies is or designate. So just like with many of our policies, it says the CAO shall be responsible. CAO, although is responsible for a lot of things, can't necessarily be at every meeting overseeing absolutely every detail of running a town. So a lot of the times it means or designate, and so I'm that town designate here. Okay, so yeah, 5.2 is where that's shown there. Okay, and so there's 3 public members. So we have Nick Servos, Richard Berry, and Frank Lischak as those 3 committee members. A member of Alpine, which is Todd Cooper, and Gia will be helping me administrate the committee and supporting the committee that way. Okay, and so it goes over the eligibility parameters. resignations. So if there is ever resignation, it needs to be done in writing there, and then we'd have to go through a process of replacing that member. Okay, quorum will be 3 voting members. The committee will, wherever possible, try to have consensus-driven decisions. Otherwise, Section 8.6 goes over those kind of details there. And it outlines here how complaints are handled, and it will go to this committee if need be here. Okay. Meeting records, it shows basically the details of how and when we shall post these meetings for the public, what kind of meeting minutes we will be providing, and who signs off on that. Okay. And yeah, that's basically the bylaw in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions about the bylaw? Okay. Right, we'll move to the next topic. Yeah, so roles and responsibilities. We kind of talked about that already in some ways in terms of what my role is, Georgina's role, mayor and council's role, the different members on the committee here, and I think we got that sorted out here. In terms of the key issues, we'll talk about the chair in a minute here. So amongst one of the community members, there'll be one chair, and so we'll deal with that in the next section here in a minute here. Okay. The key issues coming up here, I think again, it's I think the ongoing issues that we hear from the community that are on the complaint side of the spectrum is really relates to the noise. At times, there's fumes and odors that come up, and also greenhouse gas and sustainability types of issues. Otherwise, the other general concerns or general issues is really just the complexity of running a heliport. We talked about that on site here today in terms of all the safety aspects, running a complex business with a very diverse customer base ranging from provincial and federal agencies, even municipal, emergency services of all sorts, fire management, trail development, remote lodge support for the different outfitters in the backcountry, heli-tourism, and those kinds of things. So a very diverse issue. So basically, it's basically an important role to ensure smooth operations in there, and so partly by committing to having a heliport, our job as a municipal heliport owner is to ensure that those services are done responsibly, safely, and in the community's best interest here. And I'd like to just anyway thank the committee and Todd, of course, and Alpine for prioritizing that very much. So specifically in the coming weeks and months, we'll be reviewing a new kind of annual report. So Todd will be summarizing the 2021 information we won't have all the data here. Like basically the new lease will start having the new data in next year's format, next year's report. So this year's report will be fairly similar to what we've seen in the 2020 version. But Todd, if you want to use the headers wherever it makes sense to get into that sort of habit, I guess that would be great. So basically you'll be collecting that data of the greenhouse gas type information, the economic information, and those kinds of things a little bit differently in next year's report. Yeah, and so if you, Gia, want to put up the actual annual report from 2020, it's a really good summary of basically what happened in the infamous year of 2020. So, in general, Alpine provides a good summary of the year synopsis in the beginning here, and as mentioned, that 12-minute flights are no longer going to be occurring. Noted that emergency flights upticked quite a bit, but also the complexity of them. They're never they're somewhat erratically occurring, but what's happening, it seems to be more often, is there could be multiple rescues in a day that might even need multiple unit helicopters. So that's adding a whole nother layer of complexity to those emergency services. If I want to keep scrolling. And different work that basically these are the audits and inspections are, this is a very short condensed list of all the different inspections that these folks have to perform on a daily, monthly, annual basis. Yeah, and then basically different things in terms of the stewardship. Already starting to think about what kinds of ways we can be softer in the landscape, and then community support down below. Is there any kind of questions on this report in particular, or any of the formats or anything like that? How the next the 2021 report's going to look like, or anything like that? So in the lease, Todd, if you correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's written that March 31st it's due.
I believe you're correct. Yes.
Yeah. So you're welcome to submit that anytime before between January 1 and March 31st. You don't have to push it right to the last date.
That's kind of my system, though.
Yeah, I know. That's okay. But yeah, so you have until then. So once we get that document, I'll usually typically review it for completeness, and then if it's good to go, then I will release it to the rest of the group, and then we would typically call a meeting around that, probably within a week or 2 weeks after it's been reviewed by myself, and then that's an opportunity for us to get together, go over any of the details of that report, and then also if there's any complaints that I have logged on my operations that we need to discuss or review. Okay. Okay, thanks, Gia. That's good. Yeah, so that's the background in a very, very quick manner here. And again, we went over some of that earlier, which was nice to kind of get a feel of the site and put things into context. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Okay, hearing none, we'll carry on. Okay. So now that you know the details of what is involved with the committee and the background and that kind of thing, the parameters that we have to work within, the bylaws that state that we need to have a chair, those kinds of things, and the periodicity of our meetings and that, I'd like to throw out an invitation to the three the members of the public. If there's any one of you who are interested in nominating yourself or another person to become a chair.
I'm happy to nominate Nick for continuity.
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay.
As the last time, I got outvoted again. No,
Okay.
I thank you both, and I would suggest that that the continuity is one factor that we have to look at, but as well, we have to look at down the road, maybe halfway through this term, our term of 3 years, maybe looking at making a change in the chair so that somebody else who has acquired some experience and some background in the Heliport Monitoring Committee can move into the role as chair, because who knows how long I'm going to be around. And as well, it makes good sense to have somebody in place that to get the experience to possibly fill the role in the future. So I do accept the and appreciate the Frank and Richard putting me up for the honor.
Excellent. Let's do an official vote on that then, I guess. You have a nomination, and if a raise of hands with the voting members, that can make it formal. All in favor? Good.
Yep.
So we have a unanimous. Okay, welcome aboard, Nick, again. Looking forward to working with you as a chair. And yeah, should we also action a period of time as chair per your discussion there?
Well, I think when we have a meeting, probably somewhere between January and March to review the annual report, that maybe one of the agenda items in that meeting we can talk about that. But I'm sure in the meantime that Frank and Richard, myself, will have discussions, and we'll formulate some sort of a plan and announce it when we know what we really want to do.
Okay.
Okay.
That sounds great. Okay, so I will pass the reins over to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I can't quite follow the script, because the script that was sent out 3 years ago and this year also talks about handling the annual report in this meeting, or the script does anyways, but we won't be in a position to do that for a few weeks or a few months anyways. I just want to, because it is an agenda item, or I think clarify that in the past 9 months or 10, 11 months, really, that there have been no official complaints lodged regarding the operations of Alpine helicopters. Confirm that, Stephen?
Yeah, so that's item F. So if you want to, let's move to
Oh,
item
okay.
F there. It says
Oh,
review.
sorry, I jumped across. I should be turning it over to Todd to see if he wants to add anything else. And I should mention to the public that one of the things we did today was the whole committee, although Jeff was tied up at another committee meeting, the committee met out at Alpine, and Todd and his crew were generous enough to give us a pretty good tour of the operation, and not just the tourist side and seeing the facilities they've got to welcome tourists, but we spent much more time with actual helicopters and in their maintenance facilities. And it helped us understand that there's more to the operation than just tourist flights. And I really appreciate it, and I thank Todd for that. So maybe if I could turn it over to Todd, if there's anything he wants to add to their operations update while the public's listening right now.
Sure, thanks, Nick. Yeah, I guess I'll try and hit some kind of main topics that relate to the changes in the lease. So one of the topics is sustainability and fuel. So we've joined a working group for the introduction of biofuels in helicopters. Proud to start down that road as soon as we can. And like I was mentioning earlier today, that we're very much limited to what the manufacturer approves as a fuel. So until all of these biofuels or changes to the fuel is completed, we can't use those fuels until it's approved by the manufacturer. So it seems like it's gaining ground in the aviation industry. So that's good news, and hopefully that technology or the change in the fuel comes sooner than later. Couple highlights for I was lucky enough to donate a flight for a Wolverine study up in the Talus Lodge area this summer. And as well, we continue to help support Parks Canada with their license project. We're also did a number of flights for the Yamnuska Trail rebuild, as well as Turbine Canyon construction work in Gay Country. As we all know, there is an extremely warm summer in Canada for everybody. So what kind of came out of that for us was having the ability, because of the proximity of the heliport, to action 2 fires that were quite close to our communities in Deadman and Canmore itself. So I think it just highlights that when that second fire in Deadman's Flats happened, I was actually out already flying, and I called that fire in, and then it was actually the first helicopter on that fire to start working, and also the last aircraft to go home at the end of the day, right at dark. So says a lot about the location of our heliport and how important it is for circumstances like fires, and obviously our rescue work as well. So our rescue work, the number of rescues this year is already higher than the total number from 2020. So rescue work is still quite busy, and it seems to be increasing from the COVID. Last year, you know, we lost 2 months basically where we didn't do a rescue, which is highly unusual for us. So this year we're already past that 2020 total volume. So. Also, kind of lastly, to round everything out, we've already implemented changes in our sightseeing program, so that 25-minute minimum length of tour is already offered. So we've already eliminated the 12-minute tours, and now our shortest tour is 25 minutes, and that's already implemented ahead of the December 1st criteria. Thank you.
Okay. I should mention to the public that we were very fortunate to have Alpine react so quickly to the 2 fires we had in our area. And I did reach out both in social media and as well directly with Todd and his crews to thank them for their fast action, because it did save an awful lot of headache, because, you know, once one of these fires gets out of control, it's very difficult to get it back in control. But with Alpine being on site very quickly with their equipment, and then it was nice to see with the Deadman's operation that they actually some large water bombers came in and assisted with the operation. So on behalf of all the community, Todd, you and your crew were very much appreciated, and thank you. Okay. All right. Going on to item. Anybody have any questions for Todd?
Yeah, Nick, thank you. And I echo those sentiments here. Thank you to Alpine for all your work on that. Yeah, just a great effort, and really appreciate it. It was downright scary how dry it was this year, and glad that your team was able to handle that situation quickly for everybody. One question, so we talked about noise and the technology on site here today. Do you want to speak to some of the things that you've implemented in the last year or two, get people up to speed as to what's been done with your equipment?
Yeah, I can do that. So all of our sightseeing aircraft have a tail rotor, Van Horn tail rotor. So it's 30% quieter than a Bell tail rotor. So a different manufacturer that's helps to reduce the noise by the design of the actual tail rotor itself. We've also installed a set of main rotor blades on that one of those sightseeing aircraft. There's no actual documentation that those rotor blades are quieter. I believe they are. Definitely when it's at idle and sitting on the ground, it seems to be quite a bit quieter. So hopefully that'll help make a difference. And we will replace those rotor blades if possible as the need to replace the rotor blades comes in. So they're life limited, and they, at the end of their useful life, then we'll replace them with a new designed rotor blades if possible. So we're still looking for other types of technology that we can improve our noise footprint with. And it's also very similar to the biofuels in that regards, to the fact that until a manufacturer approves that, or Bell Helicopters approves new technology for the aircraft, it's just not available to us.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Todd? I see none. Okay, item F. Stephen, you have already confirmed there have been no complaints received. Just so the committee knows that, as Stephen mentioned in his prior discussion, that if there is a concern raised by a member of the public about the Alpine operations, they would file that concern with the town, with Stephen. He would then review it, and then if it has merit, well, then it gets passed on to us and Alpine to do some more investigation and discussions about it. But if it is deemed by Stephen to be a not worthwhile complaint, I guess he handles that in his own way. But we only see things after it goes through Stephen and Alpine, then it could come to us for more discussion. So just so that everybody's aware of that, that criteria. In the 3 years that three previous years that I've been on the committee, we did not have one official complaint that was passed on to us. I found that a little bit surprising in view of the discussions that we heard during the lease renewal process and the concerns expressed by the residents of Canmore about noise. I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to encourage more formal or some formal complaints coming in, but I just want to make it a point that in 3 years, there have been no formal complaints about noise. So it's very difficult for us as a committee to investigate something if we don't get the information. So it's mainly saying to the public, yes, but don't be frivolous in your complaint, saying, you know, whatever. But I just want to make the point that we have not been sitting around doing nothing, only because of the fact we've been given nothing to do. So I'm not trying to make work for us, but you know, there's two sides to this, and and I think during the whole lease discussions that took place in all the forums, that a lot of the concerns that were raised have been addressed in the new lease, restricting the number of flights, the duration of the flights, and whatnot. And I think it's going to take a while. We're not going to see too much of it this winter, but next summer, when everybody's sitting in their backyard and we see the effect of reduced number of flights down to 35 a day type thing, I think that's going to make a big improvement on our community. And that's about all I could say there. Anybody? Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, so to add to that. So in general, again, yeah, I have not received that many phone calls in general about heliport operations. And even when this was a more politically charged item in the lead up to the heliport lease renewal, that kind of thing, in general, it wasn't that many questions or comments or emails to me directly. So in terms of me vetting, there wasn't much to vet, to be honest. And you know, people can have conversations with me and can voice their concerns, and that to me is not considered a formal complaint that the Heliport committee would need to so I mentioned those in if need be at the meetings, if as a general comment, but they're not lodged as a formal complaint, because none of them, like making a helicopter noise comes with the territory. It's not a breach of the lease in any sort of way.
Right.
And those kinds of things. So that's the difference, is that there's no breaches of actual operations. So, for example, there's a smell type inquiries at some points in time. I did contact Todd a number of times about that, investigate if there was a spill or anything like that on site. There was no spills. That's not a breach of their operations.
Yep. Good. Thanks for that clarification, Stephen. Did anybody else have any comments that they want to make about the noise complaints?
Nick, I'd like to make a comment if I can.
Go ahead, Frank.
Having been in the thick of discussions with people who were affected by the noise over the last 2-3 years now, it's I don't even know how many years it's been. There's a general understanding among the people who are affected that you can make a complaint, but if they're operating within the terms of the lease, as Stephen has said, then that's not a basis for a complaint. So it really wasn't a matter of nobody's complaining, so why are these people complaining? It was a matter of, well, the way the lease is written, there's not going to be able to be any action on something that's happening within the terms of the lease. So that's where the frustration came in. And so now we have a new lease, and we have a 10-year lease going on with this. And I don't know how the noise will be received with 35 flights a day versus up to 60. So I think everybody's just holding their breath to see, well, when the trains come back and the buses come back, how's that going to play out in the real world?
Good point. Good point. Okay. Any other comments? All right. Going to item G, there are no additions to the agenda. I don't have anything to put on as well. I would suggest that Frank and Richard and I get together over the next little while, and we can talk about things and directions we want to encourage, or things that we see as priorities and whatnot. In the last 3 years, I've never had a problem getting a hold of Todd or getting a hold of Stephen. Even when he was on vacation, he called me back at one point there. But it's just if you come across something, reach out to Todd or to Stephen and talk about it. And if it's serious enough, well, then we'll have a meeting. We're only mandated to have, I think, 1 meeting a year, but we can have more. I don't want to have a meeting a week type thing. But if there's something that warrants us sitting down and talking about it, even if it's just informal, let's do it. Let's not get something get way out of hand and then have to deal with it, or it comes to council as an issue raised by citizens type thing. I just encourage conversation between Stephen and Todd, and even Jeff. He's very receptive, although he's a little busy sometimes too. But it's just we can't have secrets amongst our group, and more talking we do, the more knowledgeable everybody becomes, and the better we are to address a problem down the line. Okay. So if there's Stephen,
one thing, we should make a motion about the recommendation about the noise complaints, please, and vote on it.
Oh, okay. All right. From the information provided by Stephen, there have been no noise complaints received since our last meeting. So therefore we accept that, and all in favor of accepting that report?
Could I have a discussion on the motion?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah, I think the way it's written, in the sense that this is in accordance with the way the lease is expressed and the role of the Heliport Monitoring Committee is written in Bylaw 2018, then I would agree that yes, no official complaints have been received. That doesn't mean that there are not complaints that have been registered in other ways, but I will agree with your comment.
Okay. Yeah. No. Okay. I understand that. Okay. Richard, do you have a complaint or a concern?
Oh,
Okay. So I guess let me look down here just a second. Okay, so the formal question should be recommendation. There have been no complaints indicating a violation in the agreement. I move that the committee approve the review of the Heliport complaints since the last meeting on April the 28th of this year, and which there have been no complaints. So those in favor? Okay, and that's unanimous. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, I guess we can adjourn the meeting if there's nothing else.
Could I just raise some under other items? Is that
Sure.
eligible?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I guess when your comments about, getting together and having a chat about, dealing with issues that come up, I thought maybe it might be worthwhile at this meeting to sort of flag some of those for future consideration. Would that be appropriate for the group?
Okay, I have not made up a list, or I don't have, I'd like to give some more thought to it.
Yeah.
But did you have something in mind, Frank?
Sure. Yeah, just for maybe in preparation for the next meeting. I think the bylaw itself might require some amendments given the new lease, the terms of the new lease. The first thing I can think of is that Schedule D is now Schedule C. So from a technical viewpoint, that would probably be rewritten to reflect the current reality of the situation. And also there are a couple of aspirational statements made in the lease that would require ongoing investigations and action by Stephen, the committee, and the town to implement those. And one of those is the greenhouse gas emissions. There's certainly some questions about how is that going to be done, and what role the helicopter monitoring committee would play in the establishment of that terms of reference, and how do we look at it. Another one is the statement about noise reduction in Section 7 to the tenant shall research, implement, and report on an ongoing basis in relationship to noise, putting some sort of terms of reference around that, and what kind of questions we can ask Todd to go research, and what kind of alternative information we can bring to the table to reduce that noise would go a long way to make me feel that the Heliport Monitoring Committee was doing something fairly useful and progressive. And so, those things, I think we should have some sort of more in-depth discussion on how those things are going to be implemented. A third thing that I'm not really sure how that's going to work is if the town approves the motion for a heliport relocation analysis. So who's going to be doing that? And is there a role for the Heliport Monitoring Committee to weigh in on that and give its thoughts and feedbacks and recommendation to the town? Or is that something that's going to be totally divorced from the Heliport Monitoring Committee and just dealt with by the town, and they may or may not give us a copy of the draft report rather than looking into the terms of reference of that itself and making recommendations? So those are four things that I think I'd like to see something in a future meeting, and not too far down the future, before some of these terms of reference get solidified by the town.
Okay, can I suggest to the whole committee that I like a lot what you've just related, Frank, that perhaps if you would jot those down in an email to me, and the rest of the committee, if you've got other points that you think we should be looking at, then we can put that list together and circulate it amongst our whole group and say, well, here's a plan of action. How do we approach this? And as well, we can work it out with Stephen whether this is going to be something that can be handled without a whole pile of our committee work, whether it just something can fall into place, or how we should best handle it, because our role within the bylaw is very narrow. And if we want to expand that role to be involved in the possible looking at a new location type thing, that under the terms of the bylaw and our mandate, that's really not there. And you can say, okay, it really wasn't in place for us to do all the help out with the preparatory work for the public engagement, but we were directed by council to do that type of thing. So I think if amongst ourselves, if we float a list around with all our suggestions to the areas that we see we want to approach in the next 3 months, 2 months, 1 month, or a year, and we can prioritize those, and then get Stephen's input and Todd's input as to which way we can go in these areas, and have a discussion about it. And maybe it's going to take another meeting in 3 or 4 weeks type thing to say, here's the list. What do we want to do? Or what can we do? And I've got no problems with that at all. I think
So Nick, to get that into a form of an action, it would need to be put into a motion and voted upon by this group. So that all this is a good discussion, super valid. I think we need to make this into a succinct motion that this group can vote upon.
But we're not prepared right now, and this is why I'm saying that let's float an email with all our suggestions.
Okay.
And then
informally.
see, then we're in a better position rather than maybe making a suggestion of 1 or 2 things right now and missing 2 or 3 others. So let's just take let's walk up in the next week, 10 days, and then come up with our list and then decide, okay, do we need a special meeting to do this or to handle this?
So my suggestion is not to narrow down the list today, rather the action would be, does the group want to submit a list of items they would like to discuss that may expand the scope of the Heliport Monitoring Committee? That would be the motion, something like that.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Making sure.
Frank, does that make sense to you?
So do you need a motion of that right now?
Yes, I would say so. To
I don't think we do. I think
Well,
I think we've just had enough of discussion. And what I'm trying to say is let's get our act together as a committee before we start putting stuff in writing and formalizing something.
Would it be worthwhile to establish another meeting date? And by that time, we'll have time to sort of talk amongst ourselves and bring that forward as agenda items at the next meeting?
that could be arranged too. So yeah.
Yeah, let's, I would much rather we get our act together as a group so that we really know where we're going, what we're dealing with, before we start putting motions out and committing ourselves and doing something. You like to know the answer to the question before you ask the question.
Right.
Or nothing.
So, okay. So I think, and with the normal way that we do our minutes, this type of discussion does not show up in the minutes.
That's exactly what I'm saying here. So then that's fine here. So other items would not indicate that this occurred, to be on record in terms of the video, but there's no action or motion, and that's fine. It can carry on that way until people solidify what they're wanting here, and then it can be more formalized and more thought out at the next meeting. That's fine too.
Okay, makes sense, Frank?
Is there an opportunity to just like have a placeholder date for a meeting, which could be changed around as the need arises, but that would give us a foothold into that conversation and, have an actual time and a place where we can have that discussion?
Tomorrow, first thing, I'll send out some suggested dates after talking with Stephen and Jeff, because Jeff's schedule and Stephen's schedule are more complicated than us 3 retired guys, and Todd's as well. So let's, I'll shoot something out tomorrow to the group, say, here's a list of dates. I'll probably just do a doodle poll, or Georgina will handle something and do a doodle poll and say, hey, here's the list of dates, and we will keep it within the next 3 weeks. Okay, so that's.
So you're thinking another meeting in another 3 weeks? Is that right?
How's that gonna?
Because right now, the next meeting that we were like what we would have would be at some point after we receive the annual report. So the latest Todd would submit that is March 31st. So in April would be the next planned meeting right now. So is that a date that we want to be working toward, or is it something earlier?
I think we want to work at something earlier than that. I'm here, I'm just thinking it's November now. December is always a problem. Maybe we look at January, but let's flute, the first couple of weeks of January, that's not inconceivable. And even if we've got a date and we don't want to do anything, or we don't have anything to proceed with, we can cancel the meeting. But it's just, I think Frank's trying to say, hey, let's have something that we work for. And that makes sense. So, okay. So we'll float some dates out tomorrow, and we'll just see what works good for everybody. And as well, in the next week, I would suggest that the members of the committee, if they've got areas of concern or things that they want to suggest the committee take a look at or get involved in, we can create that list. And then in the few weeks after we get that list and then circulate it amongst the group, then we can have some time to think about it. And then possibly that first 10 days of January, that type of a date would make sense. So anyways,
That works.
that's my suggestion. Okay.
Yeah.
Makes sense, Stephen?
And yeah, so what I'll be doing too is I'll be discussing internally here about this discussion here, and get a litmus test. We have Jeff here as well. You can maybe give us a litmus test of maybe the new council's interest in if it's been discussed at all in terms of the possibility of expanding the heliport's role or not. Has that been discussed amongst your peers at all?
But it's all been budget talk so far, so
Yeah,
that hasn't
understood.
come up at all yet.
Okay.
But I did also notice that, we will have to look at our bylaw as Frank pointed out, it does, still talk about section D, and now it's not section D. So that's one of the things that I did notice that that'll have to come back at some point to council. So yeah, that I think right now it's all budget stuff right now. So that's Heliport committee's not quite top of mind at the moment. So
Yeah.
No.
And just for the information of the new members on the committee, what normally happens following one of our meetings is that Georgina makes up the minutes of the meeting, runs them by Stephen. Stephen sends them to me to see if there's any problems, that I see any problems with it. And then it comes out to the committee for comments, concerns, or agreement. And it's usually within a week to 10 days after the meeting that the formal minutes get approved, and then they're on the record type thing. So it doesn't take 2 or 3 or 4 months before we see the minutes. And I don't want to commit to Georgina, but it's usually just a few days after that they start floating around the group, and they get approved. There's a simple email that comes out saying approve, yes or no, after everybody's had a chance to view them. Okay. So that'll happen probably within the next week to 10 days. All right. Okay. Anything else anybody else wants to bring?
No.
Okay. I guess we can adjourn.
Thanks,
All those
everybody.
in favor? All those in favor of adjourning? Yes, good. Okay. Although we don't need a motion to do it. So, all right. Thank you, folks. And looking forward to the next 3 years working with everybody.
Great.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Yeah.
Good night.
Good evening.
Have a good night.